money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Customer, clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Getting money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change on me. I never switched up. Been down since day one. Stay social. People change on me. I never switched up. Social currency.
Municipal prosecutor for the city and county of Denver.
So this guy's a working prosecutor. So keep all that in mind. We're talking about ethics and just personality traits. So I introduced myself. Hi, my name is Kevin Cox. I'm going to be Amy Padden's surrogate. He cuts me off mid-sentence. Nope, no surrogates are going to be here. If Amy can't show up, it's too bad. And I told him, like, sir, I saw the communications that where you were notified that Amy would not be here, and I'm showing up as her surrogate just to make sure that we have a fair representation. He cuts me off, won't let me speak. You're not going to be allowed here. Matter of fact, when we get started, you guys are going to have to leave. Cat Trailer had already ordered her food. So her food came. She proceeds to eat her food. And Corey says, okay, we're ready to start. So you guys are going to have to leave, kind of get out of the restaurant. And Kat doesn't exactly just go along with that plan. She's like, no, I'm going to eat my food. I'm a paying customer and I'm allowed to be here. And keep in mind, we're not being disruptive. We're 10 feet behind the camera. We're not in sight. We're not the type of people to interrupt or cause any problems. So he says, get them a to-go plate. They're going to have to go. I tried to talk reasonably with them. I had a good conversation with the owner of the store. It seemed like they would be more receptive and respectful, but they were not. And he brought a to-go plate. Kat went ahead and loaded up, and we walked outside. Well, before we walked out, actually, the secretary of the committee, named Jerry Lockwood, got irate and yelled across the restaurant. She says, if you guys aren't going to leave, we're going to call the police. At which time I notified her. We're paying customers. We were here before business closed. There's no trespass here. So just we're aware of the law, and do whatever you feel like you need to do, but we're not breaking the law. So we eventually load up the to-go plate and we step outside. And there were a few people from our community and from the surrounding community, a total of 5 people outside that were actually already told to leave the premises. So we went outside and we just got onto the live feed and we're just commenting, hey, this is so biased. That was racist what this lady said. Can't believe it, type of stuff. And so we're just in our phones being quiet, standing outside. And up pulls the sheriff's deputy. He parks a little ways down and he's walking up where we can't really see him. And I'm watching, I'm tall, I can see him. He came up to a couple cars and he's asking them, hey, what are you guys up to? What are you guys doing? So he's questioning people on his way up, people that we don't know and that weren't involved. Then he makes his way up to us. I asked 2 different people to record. Some people from Aurora were recording. So there's footage of him walking up and he's just playing like he doesn't know what's going on. Hey guys, what's going on? I wanted to check out Corner Bakery. And I'm like, they're closed. He goes, well, I heard there was an event. And I'm like, we got kicked out of it. Only certain people are welcome. So if you want to knock, maybe they'll let you in. He goes, I think they'll let me in. So that let me know, he knows he's BSing us. And he's smiling in my face, knowing that these are the type of interactions where Black men get killed left and right, all over this nation, whether it's on the mainstream media or not, right? And he walks up and proceeds to try to intimidate the people recording, asking them, with a smile on his face. I'll say he was smiling, but he was like, what are you doing? Why are you recording? And the lady wouldn't even say anything to him. And he was like, I don't just stand there recording, 24 hours a day. He walked up to another person from Aurora that was recording. And we went ahead and wrapped it up after that happened, because like I'm looking at him, I looked at his gun, I looked at his 3 extra magazines on his belt. I am 6'7", I'm a big guy. I am not about to get close enough to even try to read his badge. I'm just like, I'm done here. And we all kind of made a game plan to get us out of there safely. So our Aurora neighbors said that we're going to escort you guys back to the freeway. Our Highlands Ranch people were behind us to make sure we don't get pulled over and killed, because that's an obvious reality. And we were escorted back to the freeway, and a few people followed us back to the Aurora area before they branched off, and we went home. And the video that everyone saw of Kat was when we pulled into the driveway. we pulled into the driveway, and I'm ready to get out, and she just wasn't able to move any further. She just needed to get this off of her chest. And you know, there was a lot of emotion in our household, and you know, people reacting to this have been very supportive, you know, saying, I'm so sorry this happened to you. And I was trying my best to stay quiet about it. I'm on the school board. I don't want to get dragged into supremely partisan politics with, you know, a side of town that's never going to be receptive to my needs and what my community cares about. But after I was messaged a few times by a few people saying, you need to communicate what happened from your perspective, if if you're going to back up Kat's story or whatever. I said, okay, cool. And I did a video about it. And I looked at the video of myself, and I looked traumatized while I'm talking about it. I looked emotional while I'm talking about it, and I felt like I'm this big, strong man and it's not going to affect me. And it did. We were traumatized by being kicked out, by being targeted, by being told racially charged statements such as "get to the back of the restaurant." It sounds like Jim Crow to me. It sounds like slavery era. It sounds like nothing has changed. And the entire time, John Kellner was standing right there, doing and saying nothing, claiming that he's the leader that our judicial district needs. And guys, imagine if he becomes our district attorney. That's a wrap for so many people. Yeah. And that's why I wanted Amy to come on, because you sent us there. You were so supportive of us after the fact, and they were trying to make hay on you, trying to say that you were being dishonest. So I want to have you on because you're such an important person right now. We need to get you in office, and none of this matters. No matter how mad we get, if we don't get you in office, this is all going to be in vain. So kind of give us a campaign update. And then my colleagues, Marcus, Michael, and Stefan, you're going to want to have some questions for you and talk about what we can do moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Kevin, when Kat called me after all this, I mean, I felt terrible. I felt terrible that you were treated that way. I felt terrible that my opponent didn't do anything to intervene, and that he hasn't even acknowledged what happened to you. And that is not okay. And I am not going to tolerate things like this as our next district attorney. I did want to just clarify a couple things because there's been a lot of posts, and so I'm glad we're having this. But the woman who came over and told Kat to sit in the back was the secretary of the Public Safety Advisory Committee. I think some people earlier thought it was the restaurant owner. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but that was actually—
That's correct.
Yeah, Jerry Lockwood. She's resigned from the Public Safety Advisory Committee as of yesterday. So that is an update that we do have. But you know, this has just got to stop. I mean, this is 2020, and you know, for you and Kat to be treated in that manner and no one to step in, I mean, it's just unconscionable. It's just, it breaks my heart. And it really reaffirms why I am running, because we have to put an end to this. We have to put an end to systemic racism, to avert racism. And this Jerry Lockwood woman, she posted in Facebook a bunch of false things, and then she took her whole profile down. But first of all, she posted originally that the reason you were not allowed to be my surrogate is because you weren't appropriately dressed, because you were wearing a t-shirt and slacks. Whereas you have a video showing that you were wearing a button-down shirt. And as you point out in the video, you're 6'7" and you can't necessarily come up with a suit at the last minute. And this was last minute because we had no intention of participating in this debate, but we knew if we didn't show up, they were like, oh, Amy doesn't care about public safety. Where is she? And that's exactly what they did anyway after all these shenanigans.
Yeah.
She then posted, go ahead.
I have suits. I do have suits. I will wear a suit. I've worn suits before. I didn't know I needed to wear a suit. I was a surrogate. I was not communicated with. We were not communicated with. They changed the date and they changed the time at least. And
yes, they changed the time and never told us they changed the time. So they obviously didn't know didn't think we were going to show up. Yeah, there was no dress code. I've been to plenty of forums when I was running for AG where people would show up in jeans and a fleece vest, and no one was ever turned away. So, I mean, that was ridiculous. Then she also posted that I think what did she say? That you weren't considerate, and if you had been considerate, that they would have just converted it into an interview. And then I feel like there was one other thing, and then she admitted, she said in that post that she called the police, and she said the reason she called the police is because, quote unquote, the BLM crew showed up and were being disruptive. She put that in her Facebook post. We have screenshots of it. I'll put it in the chat later. This woman is a secretary of the Public Safety Advisory Committee. They are supposed to be about public safety. It is outrageous that she was ever in that position. Thankfully, she's resigned, but this is disgusting, and I am not going to tolerate it. And I am really disappointed in my opponent that he has not even acknowledged that this happened, much less called and offered an apology to you and Catrice. I mean, it's not acceptable. And
let's talk about the opponent, a Marine. He practices law at NORAD. He's still in the reserves. He's supposed to be holding himself to the highest level of accountability right now. Still, he's still serving. I appreciate his service if he went overseas and saw fighting, but right then and there, he had an opportunity to fight with no bullets, no gunfire, no combat. Just use your words and stand up and be the leader that you're saying that you want to be for the largest judicial district in the state. The stakes are very high. This is also the most diverse judicial district.
Oh, yes, yep.
So, you know, with a black woman right here, Stefania, I would love to hear your reaction to when a black woman got told to eat at the back of a restaurant, what that kind of brings up for you and how you equate that.
I mean, it's definitely Jim Crow. I can certainly empathize with Kat and how she felt, and how she just had a meltdown when it was all over, because I probably would have done the same thing. It's staggering to think that would still happen today in 2020. It's ridiculous. And I think that Kellner, if he wouldn't stand up for one, how is he going to stand up for the rest of us? And we make up a very large population of the 18th Judicial District. How could he ever prosecute a case without bias if he couldn't even stand up for the one that was right in front of him? And she was a victim. She was a victim. It's not like she was a defendant or on the opposite side. She was a victim. How could he explain that? He can't explain that.
It's true.
But what I wanted to say, one, I'm one of the few attorneys that I literally have cases in every corner of the 18th. I have cases in Arapahoe, I have cases in Lincoln, I have cases in Elbert, and I have cases in Douglas. And while I understand the discourse that's going on in our country, we can still have some stability in our home. Now, you know, Mr. Cox is a citizen, and he went to a place as a surrogate for someone running for the district attorney of the 18th. He should be treated with respect, period. There's no question about that. He should be treated with respect, just like everyone should be treated with respect. And the fact that I know Mr. Kellner, I know Mr. Nelson, I know Corey Nelson, the fact that these individuals have not stepped up and reached out to Amy, to Ms. Padden. They haven't even done that little bit to reach out and say, okay, was there a misunderstanding? Okay, how do we correct this? Okay, the answer to the question of what did the Kellner campaign do when confronted by this was to contact or to take down a Facebook page. I don't understand that. I don't understand that, why there's such a lack of civility. And where's the interaction between the campaign? Where's the reaching out and being like, okay, let's fix this? I mean, their literal answer was, okay, we're just going to take down our Facebook page.
Right.
And Amy, if Mr. Kellner sent a surrogate to a debate, would you allow his staff to stay?
No, absolutely. And that was the other thing, is that his campaign manager, even though he was there in person, his campaign manager was also there. And it's my understanding, who's white, and it's my understanding his campaign manager was allowed to stay. Is that correct, Kevin?
I didn't know that his staff was there. If his staff was there, they did not leave. We're
okay.
the only
Because I
black
think
people in the
Kat
building.
thought that.
Right.
I did just want to follow up on one of Michael's points. So Mr. Kellner did not take down his Facebook page. It's still up. This woman, Jerry Lockwood, who was a secretary of the Public Safety Advisory Committee, who since resigned, she took down her Facebook page. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, the only people that left the building were Black people.
No.
And at this point, he still hasn't reached out. At this point, just to clarify, no one has reached out to your campaign regarding any of this, correct?
No, well, I think the store, a third party talked to the store owner, and the store owner would like to have a conversation. That did happen, but
I
not,
think they
not
should.
Mr. Kellner's campaign. And I did talk to the sheriff.
So let's talk about who the third party was. The third party is a member, and I don't know if that person wants to be mentioned publicly, but that person is a Aurora citizen, a member of the Black community, a member of NAACP. She also a member of other activist groups in our community. They are trying to get this resolved, trying to make this peaceful and make it beneficial for our community, not someone from their community, from their side of town, from their political party. It's still us reaching in and attempting to bring resolution to the table. And Marcus, you pretty much had kind of the rundown of everything. You know, I wanted to give you an opportunity since you got back, if you wanted to jump in. You're on mute.
No, I've been listening, and there's not much to add to it. It's just, you understand that I've been practicing down there in Castle Rock for some 16 years. So, you know, I can just say with all honesty that that's disappointing, you know, but not necessarily, I guess, in some respects, surprising. My concern is that when you listen to Mr. Kellner speak, he talks about, at least a couple times, he's talking about, you know, fairness, equality, but it didn't exist there. And so what do you say to that? And the fact that there's been no statement to it, I think is really offensive, you know, in the sense that if you're a gentleman and you're upright and you're respectable, you would actually call Amy directly. You call your opponent directly and say, you know what, I don't stand for this. This is nonsense, and I'm gonna make sure that I disavow that publicly and loudly for everyone to know. But my concern is that he won't disavow that because, quite frankly, he feels that these people are kind of his red meat, his allies, and I don't know how else to say it, but that's just what it is. And so, in other words, you're putting this non-equity stance over you're just really over decency and I guess politics over everything, I suppose, in that respect.
And where was justice? What about justice? That's what the whole mission is to bring justice. And speaking of justice, Marcus knows, I called him as soon as this started popping off. I called you at 7:20 that night because I was afraid I was going to end up in cuffs. I'm like, at least I know a lawyer. I got to call somebody. And he was like, you know, it's my son's birthday, and you know, I'm busy right now. I was like, hey, just kind of stand by. You know, I pulled a Trump. I'm like, stand by, and that means be ready. You know, and we talked later, and he was like, there's probably not too much recourse you're going to have other than filing complaints and whatnot. And House Representative Mike Wiseman emailed me with some options of some recourse when it comes to complaints, and Amy has also talked about that. Can you talk some more about that for this broadcast as to what people need to be looking into when it comes to complaining and trying to bring some accountability to it?
Mute.
Oh, no. You're muted, Amy.
Mute.
Sorry.
No problem.
You know, folks have been reaching out to the sheriff's office. I did talk to the sheriff. He says,
You know, this group advises him, but he doesn't have any control over it. But, you know, the thing that's odd is that they have a page on the sheriff's website and they're using the sheriff's logo. So, you know, I think there needs to be some clarity from this group. Ms. Lockwood claimed when she was, you know, criticizing me for not showing up, claimed that they were like an arm or a branch or something like that. She used some term like that of the sheriff's department. So I think there needs to be some clarity on that. If they are not part of the sheriff's office, they need to stop using the sheriff's logo, and they need to stop representing themselves as being part of the sheriff's office. You know, so that's one thing. You know, again, you know, Corey Nelson is a prosecutor for the city and county of Denver. And, you know, I think folks, if you think this is not acceptable for a prosecutor to be handling himself in this matter, I think, let your voice be heard. And, we are looking, there's a reporter doing a story on it right now. And so there may be some additional information that comes to light from that. I understand the reporter was able to get the body cam from the sheriff's deputy. So we'll see what there is as far as that is concerned. But, it's very concerning. And this Ms. Lockwood, she did have a Facebook page and people were posting on it, posting their outrage, and she took it down. So, we'll be looking at other avenues, but, again, if this entity is not part of the sheriff's department and they're portraying themselves as such, and they are engaging in partisan politics, I mean, that violates our campaign laws. So, there's going to be some work to get to the bottom of this, and we are, 26 days, 25 days away from the election. It's coming up quick. So these things are probably not going to be resolved before then. But, I think it's very important that people know the truth as to what exactly happened, because even after all this happened, the Public Safety Advisory Committee posted on its Facebook page, again, more lies. It posted that we had never told them we weren't coming. It posted, I can't remember, I think the statement is still up so people can go look at it themselves. But, and it continued to essentially, blame the victim, saying that we weren't courteous enough to tell them that we weren't coming, which is not true. And in fact, it's my understanding that Mr. Nelson at a Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting in September said, well, Ms. Padden hasn't formally accepted, but we're going forward. So it's something to that effect, and there's a tape recording of that. So, to be honest, to know that he is a prosecutor in Denver and making false statements like this, in addition to engaging in this type of behavior, and just lying to Kat about posts he had made that named me by name and were derogatory, that's not okay. That's not, we deserve more from our prosecutorial community. And I don't care if you're a municipal prosecutor or you're a prosecutor in the 18th, or if you're a federal prosecutor, there's a higher standard for prosecutors to do justice.
Well, he has to be careful too, because he is an attorney. We are held to a higher standard. Unfortunately, we have I shouldn't say unfortunately, but we have the Attorney Regulations Office, which, can prosecute things like this in that sense. And that's pretty dangerous. And I agree with you. Absolutely. I did not know he was a prosecutor. So I'm glad you actually informed me of that at this stage. So I didn't know that.
So that might be some ramifications on cases. He's shown that he's willing to lie publicly, repeatedly, and he's willing to pull these types of maneuvers. What does that mean for some of these defendants out there that he's prosecuted in Denver County? There may be some more. There may be a very big story that Denver Post may want to look into, Colorado Politics, or any of these media outlets. DBT investigates. You know what I mean? Like, we need to be looking into this sort of thing. So this is not going to get fixed before the election. Let's talk about the election. So let's say—
Can I ask one question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to go back. You said, Ms. Padden, that the restaurant owner reached out to you and wanted to sit down and have a conversation with you?
No, so an individual who lives in Aurora reached out to the restaurant owner, and then the restaurant owner expressed an interest in having a conversation.
Okay, because I hold them, I would think that they're held in the same category as Mr. Kilmer, because they did nothing and they allowed somebody to be kicked out of their restaurant based on their color. They criminalized the color of cat skin, and that's just, it's reprehensible. They did nothing to assist her.
Very much so. So you were thinking about some ramifications.
I'm boots to the ground, so I absolutely think that NAACP needs to boycott this establishment. They're a chain, and with this owner in this position of having this type of business and having and obviously not appreciating the black dollar, that he would kick out a patron who was already paid for their meal and now can't sit and enjoy it. I'm boots to the ground. I think they need to be boycotted. I think they need to be it needs to be a national boycott, and we'll see what we can do.
So yeah, that's ongoing. We want to also talk about, your campaign. Amy.
Yeah.
We need to update what's been going on. I know you just did a forum today with the Windcrest retirement community, but I also know you've been having town halls. You've had very impactful town halls over the last 6 months. But at the same time, you know, what else do we have going on?
Yeah, well, so right now we're getting ready to ramp up our Get Out the Vote efforts. So ballots in Colorado start to get mailed tomorrow. So, people, probably no one's going to get their ballot over the weekend, and Monday is actually a federal holiday, but, as early as Tuesday, people in Colorado could be voting. And so it's critically important to fill out the ballot. I would fill it out as soon as you get it. Don't put it back in the mail. Take it to a drop box, because we are all worried about what shenanigans might occur with the Postal Service. And it's we've got tons of drop boxes around the state, around the metro area. We have got a great Secretary of State who's working very hard to make sure that our elections are safe, Jenna Griswold. And fill out the ballot, but fill out the whole ballot. And that has been an issue with lots of everyone's focused on the presidential race and the U.S. Senate race. But these, down the ticket races, these local races, in my district is over 1 million people. It's bigger than a congressional district. It's bigger than Jason Crow's district. And, these DA races have a huge impact, because, the DA, him or herself, can set so many policies, can set, the tone in the office. Are we just going to be focused on locking people up and throwing away the key? Or are we going to be looking for cases of nonviolent offenders where we can rehabilitate them, where we can put them into a diversion program so that they can get the resources they need to turn their lives around and not be saddled with a baggage of a felony conviction for the rest of their lives. So these races are so important. And so I've been telling people, bottoms up, start at the bottom of the ballot and vote all the way up. And vote in every race. And if you don't know who to vote for, reach out to a friend. If you don't live in the 18th and you don't know who to vote for your DA, ask somebody, ask a friend who's a lawyer, ask a friend who knows something about the criminal justice system. Just do some Google research. There's lots of information out there. The papers have been great about doing voter guides, comparing the candidates. Today we were just endorsed by the Sentinel. That's now the Colorado Sentinel. It used to be the Aurora Sentinel. We were just endorsed by them today. We had a great op-ed by former U.S. attorneys John Walsh and Bob Troyer supporting my campaign in the Denver Post on Tuesday. So there's a lot of information out there about my race, and if you don't live in the 18th, about other races. But I mean, we have to exercise our right to vote. And people are upset, and I'm upset about things that are going on in our communities, but voting is way more important than going to a protest. It just is, because that is how your voice actually gets heard. If we can change who is in these leadership positions, we can change what's going on in our communities. And if we don't change who's in these leadership communities, if we just have the same old over again, things are going to stay the same. And it doesn't matter how much we protest or raise our voices. We have to vote. This is the most important election of our lifetime by far. And I know people have heard that over and over again, but everyone, even if you've never voted before, if you aren't registered, if you're not sure whether you're registered, go to govotecolorado.com, check it out. You can still register to vote. Again, the ballots are going to start to be mailed, but there will be in-person polling places that you can go to and vote, but it's so much safer and so much more convenient to fill out that ballot at home, because you can get on the internet, you can look at, decide which candidates you want to vote for in each race. But it's just so critically important. So we are in the home stretch here. Things are going amazingly well. We have been campaigning for a long time, but even before we started this campaign, just being involved in the community, listening to people. I've done a lot of volunteer work before this, with various, helping people who don't have a lawyer in court and other things like that, because it's critically important. It's critically important to have a DA that's in touch with our communities. As you all know, I live in Aurora, and that's where we chose as our home because of the diversity in Aurora, because it's so important. And Aurora has been disproportionately affected by this office, and we need to change that. We need to work together. And we need to work together to repair the relationship between law enforcement and our communities. because it's not in a good state right now. And I, firmly believe that someone like me from the outside, I've worked closely with law enforcement before, and I know we've got a lot of great law enforcement officers, but again, we've got to repair this relationship. And me coming from the outside and being able to bridge that gap and work hard and have the connections in the community, have the support in the community. I have the support of so many community groups like the Greater Metro Denver Ministerial Alliance, a bunch of different unions, the Colorado Black Women for Political Action, and just being able to work together with all these different communities, because that's what the public deserves. They deserve a DA who's accessible. They deserve a DA who's in the community. And they deserve a DA who's not just focused on conviction rates, because that is not making our community safer, and it's disproportionately affecting people of color, when we all know that.
And that brings me to the forum that you were on last night with Mr. Kellner. In that forum, I was watching on Facebook, so I couldn't see the Zoom or the webinar questions. But he was talking about just the entire forum. He kept saying that our system right now is fair, that justice is being carried out. There may be systemic biases, but I defy you to find cases. Now, to find cases of systemic bias or racial inequities in our system. Now, he was debating you. You're not a defense attorney in the 18th, but there's 2 defense attorneys in the 18th on this call who have talked about systemic and racial inequities in the JD 18 all day long on this show. If he was reaching into the community and listening in when 2 school board members are having conversations all over the internet, when Mr. Carter is over here talking about all these things that are going on in our community, when Miss Gallegos is talking about inequities going on in her family, in her personal circle, he would know that the answer is a resounding no, that our justice system is not fair. And let's talk about one of your endorsements. You were endorsed by Hassan Latif, the founder of the Second Chance Center. You talk about what that endorsement means.
Yeah, it means so much. I had been at the Second Chance Center before I approached him, before I was even running, to be honest, to approach him about an endorsement. And then, I called him up and I said, hey, can I come over and meet with you? And at first he was like, why? Like, what's going on? Like, why does a prosecutor want to meet with me? And we had a great conversation. I toured the facility that he has off of Colfax over there. And then, I did some volunteer work before everything shut down. So and for folks that don't know, the Second Chance Center helps individuals who have served their prison sentence re-enter into society. So, oftentimes people, they've served their prison sentence, they've served their debt to society, but then how are they going to acclimate back into the community? Like, how are they going to find a job? How are they going to find a place to live? If they've been locked up for years, and they may not have the support network that they need to, get their lives back on track and move forward. And so the Second Chance Center is just so great that it has these resources available, and they opened up a housing unit, like an apartment complex, essentially, for their clients to go to. So, if they didn't have a place to live, they could go live there and they wouldn't be homeless, trying to get back on their feet. And it was just, it's an amazing facility. I spent, the better part of a day volunteering there, and, it was heartwarming. But just to talk to him, and for folks that don't know, he himself has served a prison sentence and then turned his life around and started this group. And, and just over and over again, he's like, I've never had a prosecutor or anyone running for DA reach out to me. No one has ever done this. And, I think he could just tell that I live my values. It is important to me that every defendant be treated as a human being, regardless of what they did. They are still a human being. And most people who go to prison are going to get released unless they've committed, murder or some other horrific crime. Murder is really it. So most people are going to get released. They're going to come back into society. And if we don't help them reacclimate, if we don't help them, give them the tools they need to succeed once they've served their prison term, they're going to reoffend. And that's not making our community safer. We have terrible recidivism rates in Colorado. Some years are as high as 50%. So, someone goes to prison, serves their time, they get released. There's a 50% chance they're going to commit a new crime or violate the terms of their parole and go back to prison. And that's because we don't have the resources that we need. And, you know, in some ways it's unfortunate that we have to rely on nonprofits in the private sector rather than government programs in order to support individuals who are reentering society. But I am so, you know, grateful that places like the Second Chance Center exist. And I'm so completely honored to have Hassan Latif's endorsement in this race. It really meant a lot to me.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you touched on earlier that you don't want to be part of the judicial district 18 needs to change and not be a district where they're just interested in convictions and notches on your belt. How do you feel about the complicit law, the complicit laws that are in effect right now? I feel like they're being abused by Judicial District 18. Do you feel like that's something that can change with you as the district attorney?
Yeah, so you're talking like about like the felony murder rule and things like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I would support right now the felony murder, for people who don't know, is essentially you can be convicted of murder in the state of Colorado without having any intent. So this is like a classic, like the person driving the getaway car, you know, thinks that they're just going to go commit a robbery, maybe doesn't even know anybody's armed, and then someone gets killed. And so right now, those are a first-degree felony. They're pretty much the same as murder. And it's my understanding as well that that's being used very often, and probably the defense attorneys can tell me more of that. That's being used quite frequently in the 18th, and frankly been used on juveniles in the 18th. And we do need sentencing reform in Colorado. We are progressive on a lot of things in Colorado, but our sentencing laws are not that progressive right now. You know, we've got a 3 prior felony rule, you know, there's all these enhancers for individuals with prior offenses, and, you know, they can end up in very long prison sentences. And again, I don't believe that those very long prison sentences, I mean, obviously if someone commits a horrific murder, that person needs to go away for life. But for other, you know, less gruesome offenses, and, you know, just getting the longest sentence possible is not justice in every case. And we really need to rethink that. And Marcus and Michael, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that issue.
Well, Marcus, well, my question was you kind of touched on it. There's 2 things that happen in the 18th, I think, that are overused, and that's the habitual sentencing and direct files. I don't know what your position is regarding direct files, or if you wanted to speak to direct files and its overuse and the 18th's love of the habitual sentence as a tool to force a plea on an individual, because you know, for those who don't know, habitual sentences are a multiplier that can make a sentence go from 12 years to 36, 36 to 72, and it is used in the 18th as a tool to make people take pleas.
Yeah, and we need reform and change in both those areas. So direct files means if you know, a 16 or 17-year-old commits a crime, they can be direct filed in district court rather than going through the juvenile courts. And, you know, I acknowledge there are going to be some cases where that is necessary. If we get, you know, someone on the eve of their 18th birthday commits a horrific murder, there are going to be cases that can't be handled by our juvenile justice system. I would like to reform our juvenile justice system to enable it to handle those cases. But right now, with the tools we have, I understand there are going to be cases that need to be direct filed. But it's my understanding that's essentially the rule down there, and it really should be the exception. And from talking to you both previously, that's my understanding as well. It was interesting in our forum yesterday. You know, Mr. Kellner's like, well, you know, that doesn't happen. And what defense attorneys are you talking? Give me specific examples. And like,
Yeah, he said that
and just
multiple
things
times.
that everybody, like, literally, I have probably talked to over 100 defense attorneys. I've talked to prosecutors in that office, formerly in that office, people who are familiar with that office, and I keep hearing the same things over and over again. And Mr. Kellner's like, oh, that doesn't happen. Can you give me specifics? So, you know, but you all know what's going on down there, and there needs to be change.
Let me ask you this. you know, we all have, a lot of people have Ring doorbells now, and we're all connected to how much crime is going on in our neighborhoods. We get little pings to our phones on, you know, when something is happening, packages being stolen and things like that. I know that your opponent will be sitting here listening to this and thinking you're soft on crime, and that's probably what he will use. Let us know, though, that you will keep our community safe, and that when it comes right down to it, explain to us what you would like to, how you can assure a vote for that one that's sitting on the fence, that's thinking she's too soft on crime and I'm afraid in my community. They love to use the fear tactics. Put our minds at ease how you will handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right. There's a lot of fear mongering going on right now. I mean, there've been these PACs sending out emails saying like, I'm not going to prosecute looters. You know, it's just nonsense.
Right.
I mean, it's nonsense. So, you know, that is a top priority, is to make our community safer. And, you know, I will be tough on crime when I need to be tough on crime, but also going to be smart on crime. You know, we need to be more innovative, and we need to do a better job of identifying the causes of criminal behavior and trying to address those causes and prevent criminal behavior before it happens. And then also do a good job of identifying individuals who've committed nonviolent offenses that can be rehabilitated, and work to rehabilitate them, whether that's through a specialty court, whether that's through diversion, or something else. And that will bring our crime rates down, because, you know, if we use alternatives to incarceration like diversion, the recidivism rates are really low with those programs. And that is going to make our community safer. That's going to prevent crime. Recidivism rates for most diversion programs are, I think, 10 to 15%. I think the recidivism rates for specialty courts are even lower than that, like 5 to 10%. That's so much better than 50% sending someone to prison. And so, you know, we need to do that, but I will absolutely prosecute violent criminals. You know, I'm not going to open up the prison doors and let people out. That's nonsense. I understand what it means to be a prosecutor, but again, we got to be smarter on crime rather than just tough on crime.
So I have a quick question, and then I'm going to have to step away.
Mm-hmm.
I had a sentencing today, and, you know, I won't go into too many details, but it's always interesting to me how you get these young DAs who don't know much, haven't had much training, and really miss the point of maybe it's implicit bias, maybe it's the microaggressions. My question is, would there be a training program for DAs in that aspect that will deal with implicit bias? It's very easy when you have the power or you've been given some discretion to make decisions. I heard a ridiculous argument today on a sentencing and I laughed, because when you look at the client's history, all his history is drugs. I mean, it's drugs. And then I had a judge say today that, well, prison's not going to do anything for you because they're not going to help you with your drug addiction, but let's send you to prison. So it's like, okay, so you have that aspect of it, but then when you listen to some of the things that are said and the arguments that are made, you scratch your head and you say, well, how come you did that for this person and you didn't do that for this person? And so I think there's implicit bias in that. And so I'm rambling, but I'm working with Lakewood Municipal Court. We're going to work on a program for implicit bias training, but more importantly, microaggressions, because those are probably the things that are most prevalent. Boy, you're intelligent. Oh, okay. All right.
So well.
I love that hairdo. Yeah. And so what is your plan for training DAs in that aspect? Which will be young DAs. Many of them are young.
Right. Well, all DAs need implicit bias. I don't care if you're young or old or how experienced you are, because we all have implicit bias. And that's the first step to addressing implicit bias. I realize we all have it, unquestionably. And, you know, there are tests you can take online, and I think everybody has to take those tests, because a lot of times people don't believe it until you see it. But yeah, this is a really important issue of mine. So when I was a federal prosecutor, I was selected to be on a national working group to come up with a curriculum to address implicit bias in federal prosecutions. And so I flew out to Washington, D.C. with about 50 other prosecutors, and we spent a week going through this, you know, coming up with this curriculum. Unfortunately, this was right before the 2016 election, so it all went by the wayside. But it's a topic I'm very familiar with, and it's very important to me. And I've taken additional trainings myself. Even though I feel very familiar with the topic, I'm like, I still have more to learn without a doubt, and I will for the rest of my life have more to learn on this issue. And so, you know, we've had trainings in the 5th Judicial District on that issue, and we will continue. We will have that absolutely in the 18th. I think they do some of that, but I think it needs to be more intensive. So that would be a top priority.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
One of the things that you said, and you briefly touched on it, was tone. Was the tone of that district attorney's office. And you know what I think we need, and what needs to happen is, you know, you're not just going to be the district attorney for Arapahoe County. You know, you're going to be the district attorney for, like I said, Lincoln, Elbert, Douglas. And I just don't believe at this point there's the right tone that's being set coming out of that office. They only seem to want to cater to a certain segment of the public. So what I'm asking for, I've already asked earlier, was civility. I still want civility. I want civility between you and Mr. Kellner. I still believe Mr. Kellner needs to reach out. There has to be an understanding between the campaigns. But I also want a tone to be set where in which there can be communication. I mean, we don't have an elected DA at this point. We're going through this process and we've already stopped communicating. There has to be a way for some communication and a tone setting. And that's what I'm asking for, not only from you, but from Mr. Kellner.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree that that's critically important. And, you know, I'm going to have an open door policy. I mean, I've been talking to many defense attorneys. I've talked to you both on several occasions. I've talked to Marcus on many occasions. But I mean, scores of different defense attorneys, and they're like, no one, you know, Brockler never met with any of us. You know, no one's asked to meet with us. No one listens to us. And, you know, I want to hear from your perspective what's going on there. Because that's important. And, you know, the DA's ultimate job is to do justice. You know, it's not to get a win. And sometimes justice means taking a case to trial and getting a conviction and getting a long sentence. But sometimes justice means dismissing the case. Sometimes justice means diverting the case. And so we need to look at each case individually, and we need to make sure that we're serving the ends of justice, because that's what we're tasked with doing. And so I do want to change the tone down there, because I've been hearing a lot of stories about this. And so, you know, that's critically important to me as well.
Well, Ms. Padden, thank you for giving us so much of your time in this kind of short notice live recording. I want to say thank you to everyone here, because this was not just totally planned out. We're responding to things going on in the community. So I appreciate you just breaking away and giving us some of your time. I have one final question, and it's a quick question. Who is that in that picture back there over your shoulder?
That one? That's
Right
President Obama. You see?
Nice.
So he came to Colorado when I was an assistant U.S. attorney, when I was a federal prosecutor. And so actually it was really cool. I got to ride along with the Secret Service in the motorcade. So he landed in Buckley Air Force Base. We got in the motorcade, you know, they had I-70 closed. We're going downtown. He was speaking, I think, down at that new Hyatt. I can't remember, one of the big hotels downtown. And so, like, we get out, and the Secret Service agent was like, okay, keep up with us. I was like, all right. And so we're like walking really fast. And I was like, I feel like I'm in a movie. Little things in their ears, and it was really cool. And then I got a photo with them, which is actually signed with my name on it.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
That is awesome.
That is so cool. I was just looking at that quite a bit of the time while you were talking. Not that it takes away from anything.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Got Eric Holder over here. So.
See?
What a beautiful piece of history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a story.
All right.
What do you say, Marcus, about that time?
So with that, it's about that time to head out. Once again, thank you, Amy. And once again, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Stefania. And obviously, this is always an honor to sit down and talk, but more an honor to hear from you. I hope in the future, I know, I truly believe that you're going to win, but I hope in the future that you'll make some time for the DBT family, just to come and talk about issues and things of that nature. We're definitely not trying to put you in the spot, but we, sometimes the community just sometimes needs to hear from the top at times. And unfortunately, Mr. Brockler won't do that. We've invited him on several times. So we'll leave it at that.
I will come back after I'm the DA for sure.
Definitely. With that, we'll just say peace to everyone and thank you all for tuning in today. Y'all have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Bye, everybody.